feedback incidences and protect the health and safety of the interpreters. I'd like to remind the witnesses and members to please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. And for interpretations, use the earpiece and select the appropriate channel. As a reminder, all comments should be addressed to the chair. Bienvenue à Témoin. We have Lieutenant General Eric Simeneau, Chief Military Personnel, Commander Military Personnel Command. Major General Martin Grosjean, Defense Team Co-Champion of Official Languages, Deputy Commander of Military Personnel Command. And Anne Roming, Director General Culture and Chief Professional Conduct and Culture. We'll proceed with the Lieutenant General's opening statements. You have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Je m'appelle le lieutenant général Éric Simoneau et je comparais devant vous à titre de chef du personnel militaire. Je suis accompagné du major général Martin Grosjean, commandant adjoint du commandement du personnel militaire et également champion des langues officielles pour les Forces armées canadiennes, ainsi que Mme Anne Roming, provenant de l'organisation Chef Conduite et Professionnelle Culture, mais aussi en charge des politiques des langues officielles pour le département. Ensemble, nous sommes responsables du système de gestion du personnel et des politiques qui façonnent le recrutement, le soutien et le maintien en poste des membres des Forces armées canadiennes. As a national institution, the Canadian Armed Forces must reflect the country it serves. Diversity, linguistic, cultural, regional, and experiential is not an abstract value. It is a concrete operational requirement. Our effectiveness depends on our ability to attract, integrate, and retain talent from across Canadian society, including Francophones, Indigenous peoples, visible minorities, women, and others whose perspective and skills strengthen decision-making, legitimacy, and public trust. Au sujet de cette étude, je dirais que les francophones font partie intégrante à la capacité des Forces armées canadiennes et contribuent positivement vers l'avancement d'une institution véritablement bilingue pouvant communiquer dans les deux langues officielles. Du point de vue du personnel, notre responsabilité est de veiller à ce que le système de gestion du personnel permette aux militaires francophones de s'enrôler, de travailler et de s'instruire dans leur langue première et de progresser dans leur carrière dans des conditions équitables. Retention for Francophone members is closely linked to language of work over time. Access to training, services, supervision, and evaluation in French directly affects career progression, professional credibility, and long-term engagement. Where gaps persist, particularly in the training capacity and support services, their effect can accumulate and influence career outcomes. A fundamental reality underpins this work. People are the mission. La préparation opérationnelle et la pérennité des forces reposent sur notre capacité à recruter et à maintenir en poste du personnel qualifié et motivé. Le recrutement n'est viable que si l'expérience qui s'ensuit est professionnelle, crédible et équitable. Le maintien en poste, quant à lui, dépend du fait que les militaires puissent se projeter dans une carrière viable sans avoir à compromettre leur identité ou leur langue. Today, we are positioned to speak to both Indigenous and Francophone dimensions of the committee study and understand that a second appearance is being planned to allow members to pose additional questions to senior national defense officials. I know that these dynamics are central to the committee study, and we welcome the opportunity to contribute to your work. I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Merci.
Merci, Lieutenant General. Appreciate your comments. The first round is 6 minutes each. We start off with Mr. Kibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses who are here today, and thank you for your service. And I'm glad to ask questions on this important topic. Where do I want to start with? I think I would just start with some basics where we can focus on just establishing some ratios. And so is there a target ratio for Francophones and Anglophones in the Canadian Forces just across the services?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. There's no target ratio per se. What I can answer to this is in the Canadian Armed Forces, currently we have 24% of our population that is Francophone, as compared to the same ratio for Canada, which is 21%. So I would say that we're overrepresented inside the Canadian Armed Forces. I would add, if interested, that at the entry level, we are 24%, but at the most senior level of the organization, for the general officer, flag officer, for example, we represent 35% of the population, and same for the chief warrant officer, 34%. So that talks to the accessibility to progression within the forces for Francophone.
Thank you. I appreciate your efficiency because you answered 3 of my questions in one, so that's excellent. And sorry, if you could just speak a little bit more as to so you said at the flag officer rate it's at 35%. So why is it higher there?
Thank you again for the question. I would coin it in a way that for Francophone in the early stage of our career, I'm a Francophone, obviously. It's much more difficult to be trained and to access services. So we're forced to learn second language very rapidly in our career. Whereas Anglophone, the training and the accessibility, it's easier. But at some point in time, to be promoted, they are forced to learn their second language because it requires what we call CBC on oral understanding and written. So it's more difficult for them, and it's also later in their careers. So we invest early in Francophones by necessity, I would.
Okay, thank you for that analysis. Maybe we could speak also to the rate of First Nations, both in recruiting, in current strength, and in flag rank.
For the Indigenous, just as a precision, we're talking Indigenous peoples? Okay.
Thank you.
Currently in the CAF, we're at 2.8%. This is the onboarding we've done this year, the enrollment, 2.8%. We had a target of 3.5%. So this is an area that I'm taking very seriously. I, however, don't have much statistics in the GOFO, General Officer, Flag Officer, cadre. In terms of Indigenous, we could return to you with statistics if we have any, but I'm not, like, we know all each other, and I'm not tracking any of them.
That would be helpful, thank you. Just quickly, how do those, both on the Indigenous side and Francophone numbers you gave, how does that relate historically, say, over the last 20 years? Is it on par, or are we improving ratios, or what is the general trend?
So I cannot answer for the last 20 years, but for the past 10 years, which I prepared for, it's fairly stable. We've been orbiting in around 24%, 25%. We went low to 23%. It varies, but essentially the average is 24% over time. For the Indigenous, we're seeing an increase. We're still not meeting our targets, but we're seeing an increase because we have dedicated efforts that we're putting in place to increase our percentage there.
Thank you. We've seen a significant increase in permanent residents that are being recruited. Do we have a number or rate of members in the CF that can't speak either official language?
Mr. Chair, as part of our recruiting process, we need to ensure that people can operate in one of the two official language. However, there are some difficulties with this to ensure that people can actually function in a full scope of one of the two official language in Canada. So we are taking this very seriously because we do value diversity and we do value permanent residents, onboarding them as part of the forces. So therefore, we're putting in place language training in order to enable those permanent residents to be fully integrated in the Canadian Armed Forces.
And I appreciate that there's language training. I'm assuming because I'm aware, for example, right now at basic training, there's one recruit that requires a phone to talk to use for translating to operate, and there's another platoon I was learned about that had 5 recruits that can barely speak or not speak at all English or French, and that's causing challenges there. So that language training you're mentioning, is that before or after recruiting?
Currently, Mr. Chair, to answer this one, I would tell you that I cannot speak to those 5 recruits because I have no data on them and who they are. However, we are observing that there are difficulties at the basic training at our 2 schools in Borden and Saint-Jean, and we are putting in place, as soon as we realize that some recruits have been enrolled without the full capacity of one of the 2 official language, this is when we route them towards either tools or training.
Well, I would hope that they get their language training before they get to, or proficiency before getting to recruit school. Are there any challenges that you can share with us on recruiting and retaining both Indigenous and Francophones in the Canadian Forces?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the question. In terms of challenges, I would actually defer to the champion on the official language, but the reality are the same for Indigenous First Nation peoples, in that there are some cultural aspects that we need to be mindful, especially with the permanent residents. We're standing up a cultural awareness package in order to enable our instructors to be more efficient with the wide diversity that we're onboarding. Just in terms of stats for visible minority, we onboarded 33.7% of our intake this year is visible minority. That talks to diversity. But more specifically to Francophone, I would turn over, if you allow, Mr. Chair, to champion.
Our time is up. It's a bit over now. But I think we will be getting to you through Mr. Watchorn. I'll get to 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Puis je permettrai à M. Grosjean d'aller avec la continuité de sa réponse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la question. C'est ma première fois au comité. Fait que je suis un peu nerveux. Mais pour répondre à ça, ce que je dirais, si la question c'est par rapport aux francophones, à retenir les francophones, comme mon patron général Simoneau disait, les francophones généralement obtiennent leur statut bilingue ou leur bilinguisme plus rapidement dans une carrière. Puis les statistiques nous démontrent, les sondages qu'on a faits démontrent que les francophones sont généralement satisfaits envers leur carrière de ce point de vue-là.
Peut-être sur la même ordre d'idée, est-ce que les membres des Forces armées canadiennes anglophones sont encouragés fortement à apprendre une deuxième langue ou pas tant? N'importe qui veut répondre.
Merci, le Président, pour la question. Je crois que si nous allons à notre plan sur l'implantation de la modernisation de l'acte, ça touche précisément sur ce point-là. Et nous sommes en train d'implanter un programme d'activité qui encourage, et même au niveau de seniors qui demande que nous soyons bilingues.
Dans les documents qu'on a reçus, on parle au niveau opérationnel de la cohésion. Et moi, j'aimerais vous entendre à savoir comment ça s'implante de manière opérationnelle. Tu sais, on parle de cohésion entre les 2 langues. Comment qu'un commandant peut s'assurer que les troupes comprennent exactement ce qu'il veut? Puis comment que le commandant peut s'assurer des résultats obtenus avec ses commandes?
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la question. Un commandant se doit d'être capable de communiquer dans la langue de ses troupes, de son personnel. C'est très important. Fait que pour répondre aussi un petit peu en biais à la question précédente sur s'il y a des encouragements pour les anglophones d'apprendre le français et les Français d'apprendre l'anglais pour pouvoir être des leaders dans l'institution puis avec leur personnel, c'est super important qu'ils fassent les efforts puis qu'ils rencontrent les niveaux requis pour être bilingues. On prend ça très au sérieux et lors des National Promotion Board, fait que je sais pas comment on appelle ça, les comités de sélection nationaux qu'on fait pour assurer la progression de nos membres, un des critères est le bilinguisme. Passer un certain rang, si vous n'êtes pas bilingue, ça ne passera pas, ça ne marchera pas. Puis c'est pour ça aussi que je dis que les francophones, c'est plus au début, alors qu'il faut qu'ils apprennent leur job. Alors que les anglophones, c'est lorsqu'ils vont commencer à commander qu'ils ont besoin, puis ils sont déjà pas mal occupés rendus là. Fait qu'attendre d'aller chercher les cours, c'est là où on les met un petit peu en péril. Fait qu'il faut falloir ramener ça plus tôt dans leur carrière pour pouvoir leur permettre. La diversité au niveau des petites équipes, c'est là que ça joue. Les problèmes complexes qu'ils ont à résoudre, c'est au niveau des équipes, c'est au niveau tactique. Fait que c'est là où on a besoin d'une diversité d'esprit, d'opinion pour pouvoir avoir des solutions novatrices. Fait que c'est vraiment là qu'on met nos efforts.
Puis est-ce que vous voyez des conflits entre les personnes des deux langues? Est-ce qu'il y en a qui se fâchent parce que un certain groupe ne parle pas anglais ou un autre groupe ne parle pas le français? Est-ce que vous voyez ça au jour le jour ou non? Pas tant, non?
Monsieur le Président, je dirais que non, là.
Parfait.
Mais c'est une opinion personnelle. Puis je suis un francophone, je l'aurais vécu, là. Ce que je vois, c'est une institution qui croit vraiment fermement au bilinguisme et à la diversité, surtout depuis la petite tempête qu'on a passée, pas la petite, la tempête culturelle qu'on a passée. On a vraiment, on apprécie vraiment maintenant l'importance de la diversité, qui inclut les deux langues officielles, mais plus. Donc, ce que je dirais, c'est que je ne vois pas de friction vraiment. Ce que je vois souvent, c'est des opportunités manquées tôt dans la carrière pour pouvoir, lorsque les gens ils ont un peu moins de responsabilités, lorsqu'ils ont plus de temps, puis aussi lorsqu'on est plus jeune, on peut se le dire, les cerveaux sont plus flexibles, sont plus capables d'apprendre l'apprentissage, que ce soit des langues, que ce soit de... Donc, c'est là vraiment qu'il faut mettre l'accent.
Merci. Peut-être une petite dernière question. Moi, que je pense, M. Grosjean, vous êtes ingénieur, hein, si j'ai bien compris, là. Moi, j'ai passé à travers une école d'ingénierie aussi. Je suis ingénieur à l'École polytechnique de Montréal, donc une université francophone. Et je vous dirais que 80% de nos livres étaient en anglais. Est-ce que vous voyez les mêmes challenges au niveau des livres, mettons, d'instruction ou de formation que vous êtes obligé de traduire d'avance? Ou c'est quoi le challenge que vous avez à ce moment-là?
Merci, M. le Président, pour la question. Très bonne question. J'ai fait mon bac à l'Université Laval et génie électrique, il n'y avait pas grand-chose qui était en français. Mais ce que je dirais d'un point de vue des forces canadiennes, il y a un énorme effort pour supporter les francophones quand ils ont besoin d'apprendre des choses qui sont du côté anglais. Il y a nécessairement des métiers et des professions qu'on a qu'il faut avoir une maîtrise de l'anglais. On va parler, par exemple, d'un pilote. Je dirais, ça le prend. Fait que oui, on a ces défis-là, mais ce que je peux vous dire, c'est qu'on prend, on prend ça extrêmement au sérieux. Parce que de la façon qu'on voit le bilinguisme, c'est un peu la pierre angulaire de notre identité nationale. Donc, avec la modernisation des langues officielles qui s'en vient, on va redoubler d'efforts sur ça.
Excellente réponse. Merci. Merci, M. le Président.
Merci. That's good. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, 6 minutes.
Merci, M. le Président. Bonjour, merci pour votre présence également aujourd'hui. Si je ne m'abuse, le dernier examen des langues officielles des Forces armées canadiennes, qu'on voit, en tout cas, c'est ce qu'on voit, les données les plus à jour sur le site du ministère. Donc, 2021, ce sont les données les plus récentes, au moins qui sont publiques sur le site de la Défense. Donc là, on voit que plusieurs postes où le français est essentiel étaient occupés par des unilingues anglophones ou des anglophones qui ne disposaient pas d'un niveau de français suffisant pour le poste. Donc pour les postes dits français essentiels, entre guillemets, on parle de 12,3 % des postes qui sont occupés par des anglophones qui n'ont pas le profil minimal BBB. Et même pour les postes désignés bilingues, on parle de 63 % des employés qui ne répondent pas aux exigences linguistiques niveau BBB, donc niveau officiel de la fonction publique, pour la langue seconde, pardon. Depuis, est-ce qu'il y a eu un autre examen et est-ce qu'il y en a un qui est prévu?
Merci, le Président, pour la question. Je dirais qu'on est en train d'étudier les résultats de notre première année de l'implantation de la modernisation de l'acte. Notre plan répond directement à ce que vous venez de nous décrire finalement. Premièrement, on a une directive conjointe qui est sur le site web maintenant, je crois, depuis le mois d'octobre, que vous pouvez regarder, qui inclut une approche graduelle, réaliste pour 10 ans, pour mettre en place CBC, au moins pour les métiers de services essentiels, c'est-à-dire les choses comme services de santé, services de police, services administratifs. Ça serait BBB, AOFP et CBC au grade de sergent. On a aussi un plan pour une approche graduelle pour BBB, pour les adjutants. Oh, mon Dieu, j'ai de la difficulté avec ce mot. Désolée, adjutants. Bon Dieu. Le plan vise que nous ayons la capacité entière pour une période de 10 ans. Ceci dit, on a déjà commencé dans la première année à faire en sorte que ceux qui sont en train, comme le général vient de dire avant, ceux qui sont en train de remonter ou d'avoir des promotions ou ceux qui sont mis en place dans un poste doivent passer à travers un processus où nous regardons leur profil et que nous faisons la recherche pour essayer de trouver quelqu'un qui peut prendre ou bien ce poste avec le bilinguisme ou qui peut superviser ceux qui sont dans les régions bilingues. Alors, on a deux façons deux stratégies que nous utilisons pour être certain que toutes personnes qui sont dans les régions bilingues ont une supervision au niveau CBC. Alors, je pense que ça, c'est le plan que nous avons pour les 10 ans. Ceci dit, on comprend bien qu'il y a des possibilités, qu'il y a des écarts dans les premières années, mais on fait de notre mieux cette année pour que ça soit la politique et aussi la pratique pour l'année qui s'en vient.
Je voudrais quand même comprendre comment c'est normal qu'une personne, dans les forces armées canadiennes, où les francophones sont d'ailleurs, précisons-le, assez nombreux, même plus nombreux en pourcentage, comment c'est possible qu'une personne puisse occuper, une personne qui n'a pas les exigences nécessaires, puisse occuper un poste désigné bilingue ou carrément francophone? Pour moi, déjà, c'est trop, c'est pas normal, c'est une anomalie statistique.
Ça encore une fois, désolé par le président, encore une fois, on parle de cadre de mesures d'atténuation. Oui, c'est vrai qu'il y a du monde qui sont déjà dans les postes ou peut-être qu'ils n'ont pas le bilinguisme, ils sont en train d'être formés. Quand ils sont déjà dans le poste, on fait de notre mieux pour qu'ils soient priorisés pour le bilinguisme. Ceux qui ne sont pas dans le poste, s'il y a un poste qui est vacant, ce poste-là appartient à quelqu'un qui devrait être bilingue. Alors, c'est vraiment une approche qui est incrémentaliste, oui, mais avec une priorisation sur le bilinguisme et la supervision du bilinguisme dans les régions bilingues en allant de l'avant. Est-ce que c'est plus clair?
Je vais juste vérifier, j'ai combien de temps? Okay, j'ai encore un petit peu de temps. Actuellement, il y a un objectif officiel quand même là-dessus pour le pourcentage d'employés qui respectent les conditions du poste. Vous m'avez parlé de 10 ans, mais est-ce que...
La politique dit tout le monde.
Au moins, parce que me semble que c'est la normalité. C'est tout simplement la normalité des choses. Si j'ai encore un peu de temps, M. le Président, dites-moi là avant de lancer autre chose. Bon. Dans le même examen aussi, il y a une différence entre le nombre de postes où le français est essentiel versus le nombre de postes où l'anglais est essentiel. On parle de 6 444 versus 31 795. C'est un débalancement total. Donc, ça veut dire seulement 16,9 % des postes non bilingues sont des francophones. Même si les francophones forment pourtant un pourcentage beaucoup plus élevé des membres des forces. Comment on peut expliquer ça aussi?
Je vais céder la parole, le président, à mon général. Je crois que c'est plutôt une question de la structure de notre organisation que de la politique, si je comprends bien.
Oui, Mme Roming est en charge de la politique. La politique est claire, c'est qu'on veut, fermer ce gap-là. D'un point de vue, 24 c'est vraiment dans les forces armées canadiennes. Les postes que vous parlez, je crois, ont attrait aux postes de la fonction publique. Puis c'est là où il y a des emplois, des offres qui se font à du monde souvent qui ne rencontrent pas la cote linguistique pour le poste. D'un point de vue force canadienne, les postes ne sont pas dotés avec c'est l'unité au complet qui est désignée francophone. Comme je proviens de l'escadron 430 à Valcartier, on était une unité qui était considérée bilingue. Donc, on peut envoyer des anglophones, des francophones, puis il y a des unités qui sont seulement anglophones dans l'Ouest, à Edmonton. Mais vous parlez, je crois, des positions de la fonction publique. Mais on acknowledge qu'on n'est pas parfait à ce niveau-là comme département. Il faut vraiment faire mieux pour donner, l'instruction, mais engager aussi du monde avec la bonne cote linguistique. Je ne sais pas si ça répond, mais je voulais juste dissocier le 24 par rapport à la fonction publique. C'est vraiment CAF.
On y reviendra. Le prochain tour, je n'ai plus de temps.
Merci. Thank you. Ms. Gallant, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you, how is the CAF expanding Indigenous youth involvement in our military using existing programs like the cadets and the junior rangers on reserves?
Okay. Merci, Mr. President. Mr. Chair, sorry. I'm translating in my head. I shouldn't do that. I did that mistake before. I'm not learning. So to answer this question, we are rolling out new programs. They're still new in my mind. The Alloyed, which is the Indigenous Leadership Opportunity Year that we have at our Canadian military colleges, which we offer a year to Indigenous peoples to come to and learn and live the military life, and then they can elect to continue in the regular forces, to go to the reserve force, or to release. But at least they're being offered those opportunities. Same with summer camps, Indigenous summer camps. Maybe I should have stated that in that program on a yearly basis we have 31, and it's just a beginning for the Alloy program. For the Indigenous summer programs, we have every summer around 200 people that we host, and we try to generate interest towards the Canadian forces.
CAF isn't doing any outreach onto the actual reserves where the young people have nothing to do, and this would provide them direction and steer them away from perhaps things they shouldn't be involved in. There's nothing going on like that at this point. No attempts to get a cadet corps, a ranger cadet corps going on reserves.
So we are looking into this. In fact, Mr. President, we're looking into expanding our recruiting center footprint and to send them where those communities are, closer to those communities. For example, Saskatoon, Yellowknife. I could go on with a list, but we're trying to, by proximity, to see ourselves closer to them. Yes.
Does the current retention crisis CAF is facing extend to the Canadian Rangers? Does the retention crisis CAF is having extend to the Rangers?
Through you, Chair, the Canadian Rangers representation rate has actually gone up by 5% between 2021 and 2026. In 2021, it was 22.8%. Currently, it's 27.7%. There has been a significant effort within the organization in working to improve and build on what has been successful with the Rangers.
Russia's Wagner Group often recruits mercenaries from friendly West African juntas like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, who mainly speak French. Now, Ukraine alleges there are almost 1,700 African mercenaries fighting for Russia in Ukraine. With a new stream that's opened up through immigration to encourage new Canadians and give them priority in the military, how will CAF ensure they won't be letting these mercenaries into the Canadian Armed Forces?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an excellent question. And it's a concern that is front and center of our screening process. We do select, and we have a very rigid and thorough security clearance that they need to achieve. We have a period of probation that we've put in place in order to allow people to come in with some uncertainties, but as soon as we find that they cannot achieve medical, security clearance, or physical, they're exfilled from the Canadian Armed Forces before they even reach operational status. So therefore, we see this before what we call OFP, operational function point. It's during their training. So we do screen for this.
CC not even interviewing people who are coming in and who may go down this stream. How will CAF take into consideration applicants who have served in China's PLA or paramilitary associated with the PRC?
Thank you for the question. The screening process, the security screening process is very thorough and screens all applicants, to include Canadians, to the same degree. Those people, if they would be of any concern, they would not be enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Will the IRCC doesn't, but will the CAF take into consideration an applicant who served in any nation's military that has been responsible for human rights abuses?
Again, as part of, again, I cannot talk to IRCC process, but we do our own vetting once IRCC declare them as a permanent resident and they could, in theory, access Canadian citizenship. This is where we apply the increase and additional layers of scrutiny on every member. Should something like this be flagged to us, they would not be enrolled.
Thank you, Ms. Okay, Ms. Gallant? Yeah.
We had enough Canadian Rangers to protect our Arctic.
Do we have enough Canadian Rangers to protect our Arctic?
No, Mr. President, we don't, and we want to expand this very important capability.
Ms. Lemoyne, over to you for 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Général Simoneau, parmi les initiatives de recrutement en cours, lesquelles donnent les meilleurs résultats en matière de recrutement de francophones et des personnes autochtones? Et dans ton opinion, pourquoi sont-elles efficaces?
We're not really, excusez, je parle en français, Monsieur le Président. On n'a pas vraiment encore un objectif, un quota en termes de francophones. On l'a pour le côté First Nation, Indigenous. Le système de recrutement présentement est en pleine transformation, en pleine refonte. On a baissé les barrières à l'entrée, mais on a mis une période de probation pour s'assurer qu'on puisse attirer le monde, mais aussi les laisser entrer dans les forces armées canadiennes. Je ne pourrais pas parler d'un programme très spécifique à part ce que j'ai déjà mentionné plus tôt, là, le Leadership Opportunity puis les camps d'été pour Indigenous. Pour les francophones, on n'a rien vraiment autre que d'être à Montréal, à Québec, dans les centres de recrutement. On veut, dans les job fairs, on veut vraiment se rapprocher de la population pour susciter un intérêt parce qu'on sait que c'est souvent la population canadienne, ils ne connaissent pas beaucoup les forces armées canadiennes, à moins que vous ayez quelqu'un dans la famille déjà. Donc, la proximité est très importante. Fait que ça on s'assure d'être présent le plus qu'on peut. Puis, on est même en train de s'acheter des véhicules de recrutement mobiles qu'on va pouvoir conduire puis amener dans les endroits appropriés qui sont plus temporaires, genre des expos puis tout ça, pour qu'on puisse faire du recrutement plus local, plus focusé.
OK. Le recrutement, c'est important, mais aussi important, c'est la question de rétention. Donc, quelles sont les principales améliorations observées en matière de rétention parmi les membres francophones et encore les peuples autochtones? Et quels sont les facteurs à ces améliorations qu'on voit?
Merci, Monsieur le Président, pour la question. C'est pas pour des programmes spécifiquement pour les francophones ou les Premières Nations. Par contre, ils en bénéficient comme toutes les autres armes dans les Forces armées canadiennes. Vous savez probablement que le 8 août l'an dernier, le premier ministre avait annoncé 8 initiatives qu'on a mis de l'avant. La hausse salariale était une de ces initiatives-là. Il y avait des initiatives qui étaient plus focusées pour les instructeurs, pour s'assurer qu'on attirait le bon monde, la bonne qualité d'instructeurs dans nos écoles, afin de réussir à avoir du succès dans l'entraînement de base de nos militaires qu'on enrôle. Puis ça commence là. C'est d'avoir une bonne première... une bonne expérience lors de l'enrôlement puis le départ. Puis ça continue à travers des mesures comme le Military Service Pay pour inciter le monde à continuer à servir basé sur certaines braquettes. Aussi faciliter leur mobilité à travers le Canada parce qu'on demande beaucoup à nos gens d'être mutés à travers le Canada. Donc, on a bonifié les bénéfices reliés aux mutations de nos membres. Ça fait partie d'une suite de 8 initiatives qu'on voit déjà les effets. On a du monde puis on voit les statistiques, on a déjà moins de 1000... On avait anticipé perdre environ 6900 personnes cette année. Normal, on a une attrition d'environ 8,1 % chaque année. Des 6900 qu'on pensait perdre, c'est plus dans le 5000, dans le milieu du 5000. Donc, on a une meilleure rétention, puis je l'attribue directement aux 8 initiatives qu'on est en train de mettre en place. Il en reste encore une à mettre en place.
Merci. Madame Roming, quels changements culturels ont aujourd'hui le plus grand impact sur le sentiment d'appartenance des membres?
Merci pour la question, le Président. Encore une fois, je crois que c'est plutôt des grands changements que nous avons et pas nécessairement des changements qui visent directement ces deux communautés-là. Nous avons implanté une stratégie de l'évolution de la culture pendant 3 ans. On continue notre planification et notre implantation de cette stratégie-là pour les années qui vont allant de l'avant. Les grands points qu'on a abordés étaient surtout de mettre en place des processus de gouvernance pour que tout le monde puisse parler d'eux et aborder les enjeux structurels. Alors, on a passé d'une période où on regardait chaque cas par cas, et nous sommes rendus à des discussions de gouvernance et de politique et des processus plutôt systémiques et structurels. Et je pense que ce changement vers une modernisation de comment nous faisons le travail commence à avoir un impact institutionnel.
Mr. Savat-Tremblay, over to you. 2.5 minutes and a little extra just for you.
Oui, c'est bon, merci.
C'est gentil. Ah, ça...
C'est si généreux, Monsieur le Président. Bien, écoutez, Monsieur Simoneau, ça m'a permis, en fait, de faire quelques contre-vérifications. Tout d'abord, on parlait bien des forces tout à l'heure. On parlait pas de la fonction publique, on parlait bien des forces. Donc, qui, dans l'examen, on voit, donc, je rappelle certains éléments, 63% des membres des forces qui occupent des postes bilingues nécessitant un niveau intermédiaire de compétences dans la langue seconde ne satisfaisaient pas au profil linguistique exigé pour le poste. Parmi les 4732 membres francophones occupant un poste anglais essentiel, il y en a 26,3 qui ne possédaient pas un niveau intermédiaire de compétences en anglais. Mais parmi les 1026 membres anglophones des forces occupant un poste français essentiel, il y en a 76,9 qui ne possédaient pas un niveau intermédiaire de compétences en français. Donc, environ 87,7 des professions au sein des forces ne comptaient pas suffisamment de membres bilingues pour répondre aux besoins en personnel. Et là où le bas blesse, c'est chaque année, les forces, en contexte où on veut augmenter les effectifs, qu'il y a un problème de rétention, prévoient perdre environ 1347 membres possédant un profil linguistique valide. Donc, tout ça, on parle. Donc, je reviens là-dessus. On parle des forces, on ne parle pas de la fonction publique. Donc, je vais vous lancer un vague, mais quand même un évocateur. Comment ça se peut?
Ça se peut parce que le rapport dit que ça existe. Ce que je dirais, Monsieur le Président, c'est que c'est pas acceptable. C'est pour ça qu'on est 100% derrière la modernisation de la loi sur les langues officielles. Faut régler ça. On prend ça très au sérieux. Juste cette année qui s'en vient, là, on ouvre 1000 postes d'entraînement dans la langue seconde selon les besoins. Puis, ce 1000-là, c'est pas un plafond, c'est juste pour rencontrer les besoins présents. On est en train de mettre les ressources, on mettra les ressources nécessaires pour aller plus loin aux besoins afin que ce genre de situation-là ne soit pas possible, comme vous l'avez mentionné.
D'accord? Bon. Visiblement, il aime bien mes questions, notre président, aujourd'hui. Alors, mais est-ce que, par rapport à la question coût-efficacité, la formation en langue seconde, est-ce que les cours actuellement sont donnés à plein rendement?
Monsieur le Président, oui, mais je mettrais un bémol. On rencontre 100% de la demande, mais je trouve que la demande pourrait être plus forte, surtout dans les stages plus au début de nos carrières. Il y a beaucoup de monde qui sont en attente entre deux cours, qui pourraient bénéficier d'aller sur l'école des langues pour aller parfaire puis aller chercher leur CBC ou leur BBB. Alors que là, présentement, on les envoie peut-être à la place pour prendre l'avance sur leur cours de vol ou sur leur cours d'infanterie ou de leur donner de l'exposure. Je pense que c'est juste, puis dans le plan d'implémentation sur la modernisation des langues officielles, ça va faire partie intégrante de mieux tirer profit du début des carrières des membres pour que ça soit out of the way. Il faut le faire tôt dans la carrière, comme les francophones sont un petit peu forcés par le besoin des choses.
Donc, c'est déjà prévu que c'est en voie d'être modifié?
Absolument, oui.
Là-dessus. Monsieur Anderson, over to you.
For appearing today. I've heard the same rumors as my colleague about training problems with language, the inability to speak either official language. Is the language training offered before or after recruitment? I don't think we heard a straight yes or no on that answer.
So I did not say yes nor no to that answer, Mr. President, because by policy, we want to enroll people that are fluent in one of the two official language. We may have had some mishaps in terms of testing this up front, allowing some members to be enrolled without being fluent in one of the two languages.
If I may, do you not do testing? I mean, you do medical testing first, right, before recruitment? Okay. You do psychological testing before recruitment?
We do as well.
Okay. But you don't do language testing?
Not as of now, but this is something that we're also observing as we speak. We've been enrolling permanent resident for 2 years now. So they're going through the training pipeline, and we're observing the need for this. We're reactively remediating to this by sending them on course when we feel that they're not fluent enough in one of the two official language. But we need to do something beforehand, absolutely. But we also need to make sure we select.
Okay. And are there plans to do something beforehand? Right now, to test language before.
Not as of now, no.
But is there something being planned to do that forward?
We will, of course, we're planners by professions. We will plan to rectify any problem.
But you haven't
We're in
now.
a fact-finding mode on this particular aspect as we speak.
Okay. What level of language proficiency is required?
Well, you need to be one of your two. You need to be able to function in one of the two official language, French or English, to be enrolled in the Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay. But what level of proficiency? Because I can operate in Hindi, but that doesn't mean I speak Hindi.
Through you, Chair, to the point that the member is making, because it's not a testing at the beginning, we're talking about the policies, and the policies have within the Government of Canada are AAA, BBB, CBC, etc. The level of language, given that there is no screening, would be undetermined right now. We wouldn't be able to speak to that in policy. However, once people are in a position, each position has its own language profile. That depends on the region. It also depends on the profession, the trade, and the level.
Security risks are rooted out before operational status. Operational status, between recruitment and operational status, can sometimes be years. I know of one second lieutenant who was a second lieutenant for 10 years before, and that wasn't me, just incidentally. But in the meantime, they've received the lion's share of the training, and they've received an automatic weapon, and I'm talking about the Land Army, and ammunition for it. Is this ideal? Is this the ideal way to test security?
Mr. President, I would say that operational status is the very end maximum, which we never reach in terms of security clearance, because the training to lead to operational status does vary by occupation. They're all different training paths, if you would. So therefore, they need to achieve their security clearance much before operational status. I was just trying earlier to demonstrate that we would not employ operationally someone that has not had their security clearance, but this is not when they need it. They need it way before to actually train.
What specific efforts are being made to recruit Indigenous personnel?
So to recruit, like I discussed earlier, the LOI program, the summer camp, we're trying to reposition and to generate new recruiting centers closer to their population. These are all initiatives that we're undertaking as we speak with the mobile recruiting centers and displays that we're trying to put together.
Indigenous personnel are involved in this? Okay, that's excellent. Good. Is the military actively seeking out immigrants with dual-use skills like medicine or engineering, things that are more advanced?
So Mr. President, in terms of enrollment, we actually value people coming in with skills, already with their skills. So regardless whether it's for a doctor or for a plumber, or when they arrive to us with those skills, they are prioritized in the queue in order to be onboarded. It's one of the add-ons, the value added that they bring, absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'll turn the rest of my time, if I have any, over to James.
Mr. Anderson, that's very kind of you and generous, but you are over your time. But I love the tactic. But Monsieur Mallette, over to you for 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm only owing to my limitations in the la langue française. I'm going to ask one question in English and acquiesce the rest of my time to my my multilingual colleagues here. So yes, thank you very much for your testimony here today. Recruitment in the Canadian Armed Forces, as we've heard, has increased by 13%. What initiatives, and anybody among our witnesses today can answer this, what initiatives have been implemented to boost Francophone recruitment within in the CAF, and what encouraging results, if any, have you observed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. We are, in fact, enrolling more applicants. We're growing the Canadian Armed Forces. 2 years ago, we were at 63,000 in the Canadian Armed Forces. As of today, we're beyond the 67,000. We closed the gap by close to 5,000 over the past 2 years, in good stead and on par to meet our 71.5 thousand on the reg force by 2029, as directed by the Chief of Defense Staff. And that is thanks to lowering barriers at the entry where we could. We still need to select, let me make that clear up front. But we're lowering barriers where we can, with accepting a certain degree of risk with the period of probation. But we are also, sorry, Initiative. Oh yeah, SIMS. That's it. As part of lowering barriers, we've relooked at. We used to treat all occupations, all 107 occupations, the same, with all the same medical entry standards. So we went occupation by occupation to see if we could not accept people with an allergy, for example, and then we can onboard more people. We have access to more people from a pool of excellent people that were otherwise rolled out previously. As of 31 March, today, almost, we have a pool of 44,000 applicants that are serious, not people only clicking on our site once, but people that have gone back and forth with us to produce their age, so identity, their citizenship, and their education, so reports. So those are people that are actually serious, and we have a database of 44,000 as we speak, thanks to all those initiatives that we put in place. We're no perfect. This is not transformation. This was only tweaking the processes that we had. We still need to transform, and to do that, we need to digitalize the whole pipeline.
Okay, but further to my question, are there any specific initiatives, and this is going to the focus of our discussion here today, any specific initiatives that may have been implemented or will be implemented to help boost Francophone recruitment? Specifically?
Mr. Chair, there are some specific initiatives, but they're very localized because we have no targets for Francophones, and we have a good representation of Francophones in the forces, and they can make it right up to the top of the organization. That being said, I'm very mindful that we need Francophones, and we need quality Francophones as well. We need to select from a broader pool. So therefore, the crewing, the resourcing of our recruiting centers in Quebec, Montreal, and across the province of Quebec, and as well Ontario, Manitoba, and other provinces, I'm ensuring that we have true bilingual people. And I would throw in as well the gender aspect. I feel like we don't have enough women in our recruiting centers, combat arms women. Because to talk to one of the ratio that we're not doing well is, and I'm going beyond your question, if you allow me, Mr. Chair.
It's important.
It's on our women, we're on board 17%. Our goal is 25%. The bulk of our positions for women, the bulk of our positions are in the combat arms. It's very difficult. So if we want to be successful to onboard women in the Canadian Armed Forces, I need to attract them into the combat arms occupations. And that talks to I need to resource my recruiting center accordingly so that they can tell the story for those of them that are currently in the system.
We heard some mention earlier to my panelists that there's a retention crisis. Do we have a retention crisis in the CAF?
Mr. Chair, I would say we don't. We attrit at a fairly healthy rate of 8%, which is on par with industry and other like organizations. I would coin it the way that we don't have an attrition issue. We have a retention in certain gates and certain occupations. So, for example, for some reason that we're studying, and I'm gathering fact as we speak, we tend to lose our women at 15 years of service more than men. We lose a lot of people at the 25 years of service, which is understandable because of the pension. They get pensionable at that point. But one of the 8 initiatives that I was talking about earlier will address this and will provide incentive to sign for another tranche of service. And beside this, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm glad you were able to share your time. You and Mr. Anderson operate the same way, I see. Mr. Bazin, over to you.
Yeah, just hope that Scott and Chris's time doesn't meet into my time. Passing over, deficits. Anyway, so thank you for being here. Canada's most decorated Indigenous soldier is Sergeant Tarmy Prince, who is from my riding, born in Petersfield, member of the Broken-Headed Ojibwe Nation. Not only was he, part of the 1st Special Forces, Devil's Brigade, which was a multinational Canada-U.S. Special Operations Force. So not only was he the most decorated Canadian Indigenous soldier, he was also the most decorated member of the Devil's Brigade of Canadians and Americans. And then after World War II, went on to fight in Korea with Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and of course at Capion, Battle of Hill 57. So, very much a proud history, one that still resonates throughout the community, and a community that has a pretty significant representation still serving in the Canadian Armed Forces, as well as the U.S. Armed Services. A lot of them become U.S. Rangers down there. So it's kind of interesting that you see so many that show up at Remembrance Day that actually have also been serving in the U.S. So you talk about the 2.8% of CAF that is currently Indigenous. Can you break that down as to what is First Nation, how many are Métis, and how many are Inuit?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Unfortunately, I cannot break that down in that way. There are a few caveats on the way in which we collect the self-identification data. It is voluntary, and it is aggregated, which means that the most important aspect of self-identification data is to protect the individual's privacy and the reason for which the data was collected. Disaggregating, given the small counts in many of the units, has some risks associated with it, and that has not been happening up to date. So currently the way in which the information is collected and shared is through the parts of the organization. So we can break things down by Reg Force reservist, coats, and we can actually break out rangers. We cannot actually provide populations within those groupings at this point.
It'd be interesting to find out, if you want to make sure you have proper representation. We talk about Francophones as percentage of Canadians, 21%, and within the CAF it's 24%. So you know those numbers. We should have those numbers as well for the Indigenous communities as well, whether it's First Nation, Inuit, or Métis. So if talk the aggregate then, you say you have the numbers. How many are Rangers? How many are Army? How many are, at least Reg Force, Reserve Force? But if you can have it by service as well, that'd be phenomenal.
Through you, Chair. What I do have is a breakdown I can give you for 2026. The percentages for Reg Force are 2.9%, for reservists 2.4%. For coats, we have a breakout of coats. So the cadets, 2.5%, and then Canadian Rangers, as I mentioned earlier, is 27.7% at present.
Okay, so when we're talking Rangers, and General Simon, you talked about that that's not big enough. We need more. So how much bigger are we going to make them?
Mr. Chair, I don't have the exact, or maybe I do. What was it? So we don't have the exact number as we are determining as we speak. We're planning on how we're going to own the North more. Or North Throne and free is the policy. We're developing plans in order to grow the forces and put the focus on Canada first, the defense of Canada, and the importance of the North. So I don't have an exact number, nor do I understand the pool, the capacity that we can draw from. But this is exactly why I'm opening recruiting centers in, for example, in Yellowknife. We need to move closer. We need to understand the capacity and their willingness as well to be part, which I'm not doubting. I'm sure that they're very interested. We just need to understand this and to what level.
So the current Ranger cadre is near full strength, is it not?
I don't think there's a maximum strength on the rangers. For example, we would welcome more if more would come to our doors. We don't need to wait to have the final number to implement a plan to onboard more because it's all part of the growing the Canadian Armed Forces, which we're doing right now.
Okay, so we know that, there is 27% of our rangers are First Nation, Inuit, or Métis. What are you doing on the recruitment side to provide a greater percentage within, reg forces, whether it's Army, Navy, or Air Force? So are we targeting communities, or Yellowknife is one center, but territories is a big space. There's 3 territories up there, and at the very least, we should be in every one of those capital cities of those territories. But what about the rest of Canada? What about getting on communities, First Nations and Métis communities throughout the rest of Canada?
Mr. Chair, I don't think we're doing enough, but this is the first salvo of a broader plan that we're developing as we speak. What I would tell you is, starting this year, we're gonna be looking at implementing in Yellowknife, as I mentioned, but as well Grande Prairie, Prince George, Red Deer, Saskatoon, Rouen, Bathurst, all locations where we can, by proximity, be closer to them in order to gauge and influence and attract, frankly, more First Nations.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Eminato, over to you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Puis je veux remercier les témoins pour leur présence aujourd'hui, puis ainsi que pour leur service. Ma première question, c'est en matière de recrutement. Nos recruteurs des Forces armées canadiennes doivent-ils être bilingues pour pouvoir répondre aux questions dans les 2 langues officielles?
Je vais arrêter d'y toucher. Merci, M. le Président, pour la question. Je dirais oui, surtout dans les centres au Québec, en Ontario, au Manitoba, au Nouveau-Brunswick. Est-ce que c'est le cas présentement? C'est pas le cas parce que j'ai pas assez de francophones, puis je peux pas demander à tous les 24% de francophones qui sont dans les forces d'aller dans les centres de recrutement. Je n'ai besoin partout dans la chaîne de commandement pour faire la supervision du monde dans leur langue première. Donc, mais idéalement, ce qu'on essaye d'avoir, c'est le Happy Canadian Compromise, si vous voulez, là. C'est d'avoir du monde, 1 par centre de recrutement sur chaque heure, sur chaque chiffre, pour s'assurer que même lorsqu'on rouvre nos portes dans le temps des fêtes, entre Noël puis Jour de l'An, parce que c'est là que le monde y a le temps de venir nous voir, on est très sérieux qu'on essaye d'avoir quelqu'un qui est bilingue dans chacun de nos centres de recrutement à ces périodes de pointe-là. Parce que sans ça, on manque des opportunités, puisqu'il y a du monde comme moi, quand je suis rentré au centre de recrutement de Québec, sur la rue Saint-Jean, je parlais juste français. Je n'étais pas capable de fonctionner pas tout en anglais. J'ai encore des difficultés, comme vous pouvez voir, mais c'est super important que la première phase que vous
could not function in English at all, and I still have difficulty, as you can see. But it is very important that the first person you see, that this person speak your language. Perfect. A few years ago, when my sons were at the Royal Military College in Saint-Jean, they spent 1 half of the month in French and the other half in English, so that everybody would be bilingual at the end of their studies. Is it still the case? I do not have an answer to this, but I imagine, but we would not have stopped such a good practice. What I could say is that the CDS, when there are meetings, we call this CDS ops, we alternate between French and English. And I would tell you that it was very difficult in the beginning, particularly because the Anglophones, I mean, we have a lot of technical language. It's not that they don't speak. It's just that when we do the briefings in French, it's a bit of a challenge because most of the technical vocabulary in English, and we are starting to adapt the technical language in both languages. And this is the kind of initiative that is going to help us throughout the entire chain. So this is part of the implementation of the official languages strategy. It starts at the top. In my own commandments, I have 2 meetings every week that I chair, and maybe because there are a lot of people, me, my officers, we all Francophone, I would tell you that more than 50% happens in French.
les anglophones.
We're not saying anything against the Anglophones, but it is because they are actually asking. They're saying to us, we don't really have the opportunity to speak French. You speak to us in English all the time. So we would like you to speak in French. So I do this until, I see question mark on their face. And then I ask, do you need explanation? Or I go back in English. But as a team, we want to manage this. I know that in 2021, we started to propose university degrees at the Royal College University, which really helped for those members to have a francophone, like a French college degree. But right now is the season for postings, and I have discussed with some members of the CAF who were sent to military bases outside of Quebec, and they had difficulties obtaining services in French. So what kind of services can they have? Not only them, but their family who are going to be moving in a city that might be completely Anglophone, and there's no services available for this Francophone's family. Is it something that is going to be taken into consideration as soon as the postings are handed out? Mr. Chair, I will answer in 2 phases. I'm going to start with the families. We don't talk enough about our families. Personally, I call them the force behind the forces. They are the true strength that allows us to focus on our mission when we are deployed. The bomb squad, people like this, like if they have problems in their head, if they have a family problem, they can't focus, and then it's a guaranteed accident. Something bad will happen. So family is very important. And there are 3 aspects that are very important in regard to language. My spouse, the first time that I was posted out of Valcartier was in Kingston. At that time, I was bilingual. I was able to function because to do, a pilot program, I had to go to a tech vocab course so that I wouldn't be a danger in the air above Saskatchewan. So I was bilingual. I was at least functional. My family did not have that. So we're talking about, jobs for the spouses, and it is a real challenge. Childcare is also an issue because when you have little kids who are all Francophone and there is no daycare that's Francophone because we're in an Anglophone area, it does pose challenges. And there's also, medical health services that are very difficult. So those services on base are not offered necessarily in both languages. And yes, it brings challenges because what it does is that our families, very often, they become a single income family because the spouse is not able to find another job and has to stay home. So we have to compensate for all of this. So this was really for the family. I know that you are working with Simness Canada to try to open those doors, and I want to thank you officially. So on the military side, we are not perfect either. We have heard this earlier. We still have Anglophones who are supervising Francophone, and they can't talk the same language, and this reverse. But the solution is not to keep Francophone in Quebec or New Brunswick or other Francophone places, because I have Francophones everywhere who needs to be supervised in their mother tongue. So I have to dispatch supervising officers in all the provinces. It would not be efficient either, and it would also just simply not be fair for Francophones to just keep them in Quebec. So it's just that, education, training in the secondary language becomes very important. Thank you. Mr. Stéphane Tremblay. How much time?
Parfait. Merci.
Thank you. Excellent response. Earlier, you spoke about an operation. I don't remember which one it was. You talked about a modernization operation in 2025. And I imagine it is the same that we heard at the time where there was a little more centralization and a little more of taking over of several aspects of the human resources, material resources. So in this context, because we know that there is a single division that is officially Francophone, and that's the 2nd division in Quebec. Did the mandate stay the same, or was it centralized? Was it changed? Like what happened, and if something happened in this operation?
Monsieur le Président,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you are talking about the modernization of official languages. No, I'm talking about the modernization of the armed forces. No, I'm sorry. In that case, I cannot answer that question. Mr. Chair, I can try. I'm not the Army commanding officer, but I did receive a briefing. What I can tell you is that the divisional level is going to be the same. The armed forces are changing the way they are structured, and we want to specialize the divisions. There's going to be a division charged with the expedition employment. Another one is going to talk about the national aspect, and then another division will be dedicated to the support, like logistical support and so on. So we're in the process of specializing those. So what that means for division number 2 in Quebec, so it will be the forces at the national level. No, they'll be able to function everywhere in Canada. So does this mean that it's going to change the ratio of bilingualism in the division? Yes, probably. But because they are in Montreal, because of the proximity, within the province of Quebec, and because of the very high level of being able to talk in both official languages, I think that the Francophone aspect of this division is going to remain throughout the year, but this is pure speculation. It seems to me that there is a danger in saying, okay, there is a division that is uniquely Francophone in Quebec, and now it's going to have a function that is pan-Canadian. How can they keep their same status if the mandate is changed like that? Mr. Chair, what I would say at that level, so the division in Quebec, they already had a mandate of sending troops outside Canada, so they needed to be able to function in English. They've always been very strong when it comes to the Francophone fact because they speak French, but the English is necessary to talk with our allies anyway. So there's always been an element of bilingualism, and I don't think it's going to change because of the restructuring. So at this moment, there is not really a way to evaluate this or assess this. There's no specific indicators. Mr. Chair, no, there isn't. It is a restructuring plan. The restructuring hasn't actually happened. It's just a plan. So this is why I'm talking about speculation, and maybe I shouldn't even have done that, actually. But just to be fully transparent, I just want to tell you it's in. Very appreciated, and thank you. That's the right thing to do. If you don't know, just feel free to say so. It's better to say that than saying, anything else. But in the case that there will be problems, will there be some accommodating measures with the bilingualism if we see that there is an actual change happening? Like with everything in every division, the implementation of the modernization of official languages, it will be everywhere, including in this division, including the units in Quebec. So access to training and centralization, the understanding of how it's implemented, all of this will be briefed all the way to the CDS. So, okay, I saw that you gave me a sign.
Through you to Lieutenant General Simoneau, the Deputy Minister of Defense defended her hiring of her husband's cousin. Actually, this would be good for Lieutenant General Martin Grosjean. She defended her hiring of her husband's cousin, Bijon Charles, to a role at IRCC. However, he was relieved from his employment because he could not speak French. How can DND maintain the confidence under her leadership to improve Francophone representation in the department and at CAF, given her blatant disregard at IRCC?
thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I cannot answer for the DM here, but what I can say is from a modernization of the Official Language Act that we are embarking with there's a shift in mindset here, and the shift in mindset in the CAF is a focus from going from a compliance focus to an operational effectiveness focus. So from my perspective as co-champion here, it's really about the leadership and leadership being bilingual.
Has the Deputy Minister employed any other individual CAF or DND in her new role under the guise of promoting diversity, equity, and inclusivity?
Mr. Chair, we don't have answers to that question. I'm not tracking DM office hiring, so no, I'm sorry.
So everyone is Francophone then, to your knowledge, who needs to be. Now again, for Lieutenant General Martin Grosjean, have there been any deployments under which the unit being Francophone has been particularly helpful?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. Very good question. Actually, I can speak to that personally for having been deployed in the Congo for a year. You know, the being able to speak the language, but also as a Francophone, really enhance my operational effectiveness. I was actually the chief liaison officer with the Congolese army over there, and it was the fact that I was Francophone, I was accepted way more faster than I would have been elsewhere.
You, Mr. Chairman, do you have any actual groups, units that are entirely Francophone that can be inserted in special situations where it's particularly operationally favorable and functional to have such?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Not necessarily specific for that. Speaking when we build operations and when we build units to go on operations, those considerations would be considered. For example, if we would go to Haiti, that would be a very high consideration to have a complement of Francophones. But there's no specific units as per. But units are generally either bilingual or Anglophone and Francophone units.
How would how are the security background checks for applicants under the new immigration stream to attract foreign military talent to be conducted? Are there clear red lines that have been discussed that will immediately disqualify applicants?
Mr. Chair, I cannot again talk to the RCC process. However, it's irrelevant for us on the CAF side because we have our security screening process, which we abide by, which has a higher threshold scrutiny and is very thorough. So we trust the process, and it's shared with CSIS and other security organizations around us. We share the same process, and we always strive to improve it as required. This is not in my functional authorities, that said. It's more of the VCDS side, but I'm tracking it closely because it's personnel related. And what I can assure the committee is that security is of the utmost importance to the military organization, to the Canadian Armed Forces.
Thank you.
You can ask one more question.
Okay. So are there any other languages, aside from our official languages, perhaps any Inuit languages, any Indigenous languages, where it would be helpful to have a unit that speaks that language for insertion into some special project, special mission?
So, Mr. Chair, I would say we want to own the North. We want to be strong in the North. I think that we need to grow the Rangers. We're developing plans to that effect. If at some point, just like my deputy here was stating earlier, that being a Francophone in the Congo was beneficial for him to operate and to get accepted faster, I think the same will occur in the North. And so therefore we need to onboard more of Northerners inside the Canadian Armed Forces, people that are culturally aware, but also part of that culture. I don't have an exact number because we're developing all those plans as we speak. But certainly I would agree with the statement that you made that it could be required. I'm pretty sure it will, and at which point we'll but it won't negate the need for being functional in one of the two official language.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Over to you.
Mr. Tim. Thank you very much. It's a lot easier to say Tim than Washthorn.
Merci à vous. Écoute,
Thank you. Thank you. And it's reassuring to hear you to say that the changes are happening. Changes in the fact you have this at heart, and what we are seeing is that the results are coming and they're going to progress in the future. But I imagine that there are situations where it's not perfect. I mean, in any organization, there are situations where it's not perfect. And I would like to hear you about the complaint mechanisms. You know, somebody who is not served in their language, somebody who is not represented, what do they do?
Merci, le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, of course, it does happen occasionally.
De l'année dernière.
I even have some statistic from last year, since we are starting to implement our new law, and that we see that there is an increase in the number of complaints. It is normal when we are in a transition period. That being said, I'm going to give you an assessment of how those complaints happened last year. So historically, the majority of the complaints received by the Department of Defense and the CAF, they are filed under Section 5, which is the language of work. In 2025, the percentage of complaints under Section 5 were weaker. Usually, it's about 52 to 60%, and this time it was 31%. But it is more linked to the fact that the denominator, meaning the full number of cases, well, it was seriously increased, and we had many complaints that were filed under Section 91. We had many complaints that were more linked to the implementation of the act. So the decrease was really a decrease that was incidental to the changes and not necessarily something that is to be seen as a true change in the situation in its entirety. The most important thing in the complaints that we receive is that we have a governance process and as well as information and knowledge sharing. That process is very well structured, and it's going all the way to level 0, which is the CDS and the deputy minister. So usually those complaints, we spend a lot of time on those. We want to see if there are any lessons that we can learn, something we can add to the plans that are being implemented, but also to see if in this analysis, if there are opportunities where we can actually move forward. So we use those grievances not only to solve an issue, but also to try to do better in the future. Do you have like an order of magnitude? Are we talking about 20, 50 complaints? Yes, I do have some numbers. From 2023 to 2025, there were 73 complaints under Section 5. Under Part 6, we only had 3 complaints. So it's not that bad. Are you interacting with the Secretariat for Official Languages when you are looking at those complaints? So you do have direct interaction? Yes, we do. Okay. So just to change gear here, in Mirabel, 2 weeks ago, we had an event on defense, and I want to thank you because you were there for recruiting. I think you're recruiting more companies than people. This is for the supply chain, but that's very good. But we could hear people who were there saying that they had been deployed in the north. I'm going to give you an example that was funny. And they said that the gloves that were given by the FAC was not enough, and they had to buy, they had to buy gloves from the local communities because they were better. So Can we learn from the northern Indigenous communities so that we can better equip and better operationalize our forces when they are in the north?
Monsieur le Président, je vais prendre la chance de
Mr. Chair, I'm going to take the opportunity to answer this question because I did go in the north. That was one of the best interests in my career. The north it's like being in theater. I mean, there's no choice because it's pretty cold up there. But to answer your question, yes, absolutely. I can't really answer for the supply because that's not what we're doing here. But as an operator, we certainly bring the lessons that we have learned and identified through the system. They come down through the system. They come through our partners who are just, adding those new facts. And yes, as a matter of fact, the glove issue was a problem. Yes. Okay, what I said earlier, and I don't remember what the question was exactly, but we like diversity for this reason. We have very complex issues to solve in a world that is more and more volatile and so difficult to try to understand. So in regard to the North, it's an actual expedition. It's a true operation, just a training operation. It's an actual expedition. It is more difficult to go in the North than it is to go in Europe or in Latvia. So solving all these issues for the supplies, trying to overcome the issues that we find in the North, you need a diversity for this. And it is why the idea of Mr. Gallant to have units that are dedicated to First Nation, Indigenous, and Inuit, because they are going to teach us, we are going to learn from them. They're going to help us to be operational and ultimately to succeed. That's it.
Today and through you, just want to return back to French language. What percentage of military courses are not available in either or in both languages?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a percentage, but I have courses. I can state what they are. All aviation-related courses, because of the International Civil Aviation Act and the way that the need to operate in English in the air and everything that has to do with aviation. So all the aviation courses are currently in English only by necessity. Yeah,
Okay,
and then there's the firefighter because of the lack of, and we know them. Why I have the answer is because we're tracking them and we want to do something about them. So the firefighters and the CBRN operators currently they receive their training solely in English, but we're tracking them and we're trying to generate capacity in terms of instructorship to solve.
You stated that there's no limit for Ranger recruiting, which is good to hear. I think the Rangers do some excellent work for Canada. Are there plans for new specific Ranger units, and might recommend Vancouver Island?
Mr. Chair, I welcome the recommendation. Rangers unit belong to the Army Commander. I will certainly relay this great idea to the Army Commander. Thank you.
Ms. Remy, you stated that there's no language screening prior to recruiting. And I wanted to explore, you said we do psychological testing. Is that with doctors, with psychologists that it is done? But we don't do language, but we do psychological testing, you stated?
Thank you, Chair. The point of clarification there, what I was saying is that we don't do language testing. Language screening is part of the recruitment process, but it is not done in a way that is as structured as the language testing.
And you said we do psychological testing in the recruiting process?
So, Mr. Chair, we don't do psychological testing. We do aptitude testing.
Thank you for clarifying that. So my understanding there's actually no mental health screening, and this ties into the retention issue. Because we do know that we're below our mandated effective strength for the military and not making gains there. So that speaks to the retention crisis. But also at basic training, we now have, they're building at basic training temporary housing to facilitate quarters for people that are withdrawing because they have mental health challenges. And so they're not in training, but they're being held. Why are we holding these people and not releasing them? And it speaks to this retention crisis. Maybe you could speak to that.
Mr. Chair, I would not subscribe to the retention crisis because we're actually growing the CAF. We've grown the CAF by 5,000 over the past 2 years only, well en route to meet the target of 71.5 thousand rake force, that is. We're just under by 3,500. So I wouldn't coin it as a retention crisis. That said, I don't want to minimize the people with mental health. Half of the releases from the Canadian Armed Forces currently are due to medical releases.
Speaking specifically at basic training, why are we not doing mental health screening before people come into basic training? Because as I said, right now, there are so many people that are releasing from mental health that they're having to build temporary shelters just to hold all these people. And why aren't they releasing those people? Are they waiting? You know, there's no support for them there. I'm not understanding what's going on. Can you speak to that, please?
Thank you for the clarification on the basic training. At basic training, before they arrive to basic training, we do actually do some screening. It's a selection, and we have an interview process where we can screen for problematic personas. So we can screen them out. We don't enroll them purely. We're no perfect. We're trying to lower barriers. That's why we put a period of probation in place in order to allow us a tool that, as we accept more risk at the entry, we can exfil them. Rest assured that we've also delegated the authorities to release people from the Canadian Armed Forces at the unit CO level, something that used to be held in Ottawa before with a very thorough process. So now the school CO can actually release them. So if they are being held at the school, it's with a view, it's because the CO and the instructors think that it's temporary and they can be rehabilitated to the next course in order to become a member of the Canadian Forces. It's because we see something in them.
Do they have that facility to rehabilitate them at recruit school? And in part two of that at the recruit school, my understanding, if they haven't completed basic training, they have to pay for their own way home. Is that correct?
That's not correct. If they don't pass basic training, we will bring them back home. They need not to pay from pocket to go back home. And in terms of my limiting factor, as I mentioned earlier, is the training capacity. So every bed at those recruit schools is so important to me because that's how I'm going to grow the forces. So therefore, if we retain those people, it's because we see value in them and we have the tools to rehabilitate them. And it's not like in 2 years, 5 years, it's on the next course or the course after. Otherwise, it would be exfilled.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm assuming I'm over my 6 minutes.
Over your time a little bit.
Thank you for your generosity, Mr. Chair.
My pleasure. Monsieur Savard-Tremblay, I'll be generous with you too.
Vous l'avez déjà été beaucoup, mais écoutez, je vais pas.
You were already very generous, but I am not going to refuse it, in case this is the day where you are in an exceptional mood today. So earlier, Mr. Simoneau, you spoke of the small issues that there were with the training. So I don't know if you were talking about. There is a newspaper on the Hill which said that for the Francophone unit, they have to be, progression career is only bilingual. And for bilingual course, very often Francophones are inserted in Anglophone section. And so the Francophones are going to fail their training because their English isn't good enough. So we talk very often for officers, PP3, and then flag officer. So once again, this is a situation. How is this possible still? I am going to give this to my champion official languages because they talk about the problematic and the issues that we're having. What I want to say right off the bat is that for basic training in the Canadian Forces, we have 30% of the serials of the classes for Francophones for 24% only of the population. So we have an overcapacity to train them in French.
For the Air Force, it's a little different, but for the Army, well, they provide courses in both languages. And I'll pass the floor over to Martin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to this question, and we all went through this process, and things have improved. What I can tell you is that in terms of what our plan is, in terms of what the official languages modernization is, we really want to emphasize these problems and to address them.
Néanmoins, les cours sur ces questions-là, il y a quand même un déséquilibre.
But there is a kind of imbalance, which is quite brazen. It's almost discrimination.
Je pense, Monsieur le Président, que les cours...
Chair, the courses are provided in both languages. Francophones in the Army and the Air Force is different, but in the Army, basic training is done in French. So people have access to courses in their first language. In 2021, perhaps it wasn't the case, but if it wasn't the case, then things have very much improved. And we're not saying we're perfect, and that's why we're modernizing the official languages. But we really want to make sure that Anglophones and Francophones can both operate in their mother tongue. Well, it's good that things have improved since 2021. I'm happy to hear that. But do you have numbers or percentages? For example, of training that's not accessible to Francophones, bilingual courses that are only in English, and these kind of things. Can we have an overview of this? And if you don't have it, could we obtain it?
Monsieur le Président, je veux dire que...
Mr. Chair, I don't have that particular information, and I'm not sure whether we have this information for the whole organization. However, I can get back to the committee with the data that we do have.
Thank you, Monsieur Savantadouet. And in my haste to satisfy you, I skipped over the Liberal members. So over to you, Mr. Romanado.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. And it's no problem because it was Simon Pierre.
Vous avez été tous trop gentils avec moi aujourd'hui.
You've always been so nice with me today.
Pas du tout, pas du tout.
No, not at all.
Nous avons parlé beaucoup de
So we've spoken quite a bit about the Army and about the Air Force. In Quebec, we have an Air Force base in Bagotville. We have an Army base in Valcartier. We have a number of naval reserve units, but we don't have a naval base in Quebec. So according to Vice Admiral Top Chief, who is the commander of the Navy, well, and perhaps it would be a good idea, in his opinion, to perhaps have a naval base in a Francophone region of Canada to attract more Francophones. Do you have any comments, suggestions? Would this be helpful for you to recruit Francophones into the Navy if we were to have a naval base in Quebec? Thank you, Chair, for the question. I'm the product of someone who saw the helicopters in Valcartier. I saw them fly by, and in fact, I took a flight on board one of them, and the fact that the base was near me was very important. And it's not up to me to talk about opening a new base in Quebec or not, but I do see the value. Once we have a footprint, and once we're in a certain area, we interact with the local population. And I saw that when I was the commander in Bagotville. I had interactions with the community and also with people from Saguenay and from all the communities. We generate interest, and we're able to speak to people and tell them what things are like inside the Canadian Armed Forces. And in terms of the Navy, well, there's the Quebec Naval Reserve, and you shouldn't underestimate it. We often see them in Quebec City or in Montreal. It's a great unit to have in Quebec. And it's a sort of a maritime component, and people don't necessarily want to be in the Air Force or the Army. And so I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I could see the benefit of having bases close to communities.
Vous m'avez dit que vous ne faites pas le recrutement.
You said that you don't specifically recruit francophones,
Choses qui sont faites, est-ce que vous
but do you publish things in francophone media for recruitment? Are there things that you do specifically to get francophones in Quebec or outside of Quebec? That is to say, to find these potential recruits. Of course, we have the bilingual website, we have recruitment centers, but are there also proactive efforts made to reach francophones where they are? Chair, with respect to this, I would say that in terms of our advertising, and of course, we want to increase the number of members in the CAF, as we've done over the last number of years, so we do a lot of marketing and advertising. We don't necessarily specifically target francophones. However, everything is done in both languages. And because we do the same for a population that is 21% of Canada's population, they have the benefit of all of this work done in the French language, just like is the case for the Anglophone part of the country. And so perhaps that's why we're able to recruit more francophones, more than would be proportionate in the population of Canada. An area that we need to work on is in marketing. And currently, we're not having difficulty attracting people, but it actually has to do with certain key occupations. And I'm going to be talking about this in detail soon, but we really need to focus on this because we have 107 occupations and very few Canadians know this. People think that they join the CAF with the picture of the helicopter, people rappelling down ropes, but it's a lot more than that. You know that personally. But Canadians aren't necessarily aware of this, and that's really where we need to focus on in terms of marketing. You spoke about specific occupations. Could you give us a few examples of specific occupations where you're looking for more francophones? Well, I have francophones in all occupations. But there are occupations such as maritime technician,
les opérateurs, signals
operators, weapon engineers. Sorry, I'm saying everything in English. My apologies. These are all technical terms. But I have a number of occupations in the medical field where we're having difficulty recruiting, military police. And it's often because our wages are not on par with those of the rest of our society. But we are taking a look at all these issues. And now we're taking a look at the numbers, and we've realized that we need to change things in certain occupations. And so that's some progress that we're making. I've just got one last question. Perhaps it's more from Ms. Ramming.
On fait les examens.
You mentioned the language tests and how they're CBC. Are there bonuses provided to those who reach the bilingual status like CBC? Is there a bonus provided for bilingual members of the forces? And if not, is this something that you could perhaps use to motivate Anglophones to learn French? Thank you, Chair.
Bien encadré dans ma politique.
And the bonus policy for bilingualism is a policy for the public service, and I can't talk about that.
Bien. Monsieur Anderson, over to you.
For the benefit of Canadians, I know the military loves acronyms. Can you say what CBRN is? You used the acronym before. I know.
It's chemical, radiological, nuclear, and biological.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. You mentioned that there's a screening, Lieutenant General, You mentioned that there's a screening process. I remember my screening process in the officer stream was a discussion with a major who basically had a conversation and at the end of it asked if I was able to kill somebody. To me, that's not an adequate screening process. Is there more enhanced? This was only in 2009, I think, also. Is there a more enhanced screening process now?
Mr. Chair, this is one of many aspects of the screening process you just described, which is the interview process with that major and every. And we take their role very seriously in that we train them to do this. They have to. I cannot talk to 2009, but currently they are being trained and they have to follow a very strict protocol in terms of the questions being asked, the duration, and how to validate information that applicants have produced to us beforehand. We validate the information with the applicants. But that's being one. We have the aptitude tests that we superimpose. We have all the documentations that goes from academic to citizenship to doing background checks on the members as well.
That was one question. I'm sorry to interrupt. That was the other part of the question is, I've been around warfare a little bit, and I know that it attracts some people whose legal status is questionable. And a lot of those people may be applying here. Does IRCC pass on or alert you if there is a lack of paperwork on their end? Because in the refugee stream, that's often the case.
That's a great question, Mr. Chair. We used to have no agreements with IRCC to share information up to last year. And we just produced an agreement to an info sharing agreement with IRCC so that they can actually inform us of those and pass on information for us to validate. We wouldn't accept it without doing any double checks, but that facilitate and accelerate the security clearance process, steering us to certain areas that need to be analyzed more thoroughly, for example.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pass the rest of my time over to my colleague here, Jeff Kibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple quick questions, and I will add to your comment, General, about you said the Naval Reserve units in Quebec. There's also Naval Reserve headquarters and fleet school, so I think the Navy has excellent representation, and they do great work in Quebec. I want to revisit one of my earlier questions, and are there any challenges that in terms of retention for Francophone or Indigenous members, specific for those groups, and what is being done to overcome this?
He doesn't want to say it. He was telling me that there's no difference between Indigenous and Francophones. I don't think there are barriers to their progression. We actually value their contribution, and we're trying to increase them in numbers. And I'm namely on the Indigenous side. I'm speaking there. I briefed earlier the ratio of general officer, flag officers, and chief warrant officer being in a 35-34% of the top of the pyramid. So that suggests to me that once they've overcome the hurdles of the ab initio training, the early training, they're very successful making it in a career.
Retention issues.
I don't observe any specific retention issues for either of those groups.
Thank you. And how many complaints does the Office of the Director of Official Languages usually receive annually regarding official language rights in the Canadian Forces? Maybe you could speak a bit about that as well.
Thank you. I provided a few stats earlier. Thank you, Chair. The stats that I provided are for the last couple of years, just for your information. So for 23 to 25, we had 73 complaints that were related to language of work. And then we had 3 complaints that were related to language, to participation of in the language in the, I'm going to say this right. I'm reading in French and trying to translate to English right now. OK, participation des Canadiens d'expression française et l'expression l'anglaise. OK, c'est plus facile. Yeah, so, and that was 3 out of a total in that period, the 2-year period, of 201 cases. And again, I want to remind you that when we're giving you stats, these stats include national defense as well as CAF. They're not disaggregated because they're anonymous, and we have to sort of decrypt that based on the situation.
Very quickly, if I may, are there any specific programs that are offered just for Indigenous members, made just specific for them?
I'm unable to speak to that specifically.
Could you just repeat the question?
Absolutely. Are there any specific programs for Indigenous members that would support interest and helping them want to join or attract an important component of the forces?
So, Mr. Chair, we have two. The Indigenous, I had it right here, Leadership Opportunity Year, the Alloy program, which we onboard 31 every year to our military colleges that we can keep in the RIG force at their choice or reserve force or elsewhere. The Indigenous Summer programs as well. Which one is this? Navigator, yeah.
Raven program you're talking
Raven
about?
program,
Thank you.
Those are all the summer programs, yes.
Thank you,
Mr. Kibble,
Chair.
thank you. Yep. Well, we do have an Indigenous member of Parliament with us today, and our members here are giving her some time as well. So, Ms. Laurie Idlout, over to you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank my colleagues for sharing their time with me, and to the witnesses for the great testimony you've shared today, as well as for your service. Before I ask my question regarding the Junior Ranger program, I just wanted to acknowledge the great work that the Joint Task Force North is doing, as well as the 1st Ranger Patrol Group. Their presence is felt every day in Nunavut, and they are so highly regarded in our communities. And I appreciate that you've acknowledged that more needs to be recruited. I think we have great people like Sergeant Titus Alulu, who is a Canadian Ranger, as well as Major Sean Brinkema, who is with the Joint Task Force North, that is sharing great information about what's going on with the Canadian Armed Forces. Having said that, I do want to ask, whose responsibility is it to recruit and retain the Junior Ranger program so that we can continue to increase that interest in eventually becoming Canadian Rangers?
Mr. Chair, the responsibility for the Junior Ranger program rests with the Director General Reserves and Cadets, which is from a VCDS side of the house. It's not within my equities. What I could say, though, is, like I said, for the Rangers, we do value cadets as well as Junior Rangers, because although we cannot recruit from those pools, we value their contribution and their proximity to us, so that they are informed of the possibilities to join the CAF, so they wish to at some point. It's a great incubator within the society to inculcate values and ethics into our youth, both not just Junior Rangers, but as well as the cadets. And I myself was in Air Cadets as I grew up in Beauport, and I can attest to the benefits associated with those organizations. But sadly, I cannot answer more about the program and the expansion. But rest assured that there's no talks at Defense right now to cut. There's only talks about growing those very important capabilities.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. I too was in the Army Cadets when I was young, and I had so much fun participating in competitions. And I think that it is so important. I do recall, though, when I met with the Canadian Rangers, they were sharing challenges in Iqaluit, for example, maintaining Junior Rangers. The Air Cadet program in Iqaluit has no problems keeping their cadets, but it's the junior rangers that struggle to keep their cadets because there's no facilities for them. They'll get a high interest rate, but then they fall out of interest right away because there's no facilities for them to learn what the Canadian Rangers do. So it sounds like it's a lot more work to try and keep junior rangers in the program. So that's why I was hoping to understand that from that perspective. That's it for my question. I really just do want to share one more quick appreciation about Operation Lentus, where Canadian Rangers were deployed to Joe Haven to help with the crisis that was going on with the community-wide power outage as well as the water issue. So I very much hope that you can send my acknowledgement and appreciation for that too.
Thank you, Ms. Idlat. Well, wrapping it up, Mr. Bazan, you want to take us home?
I guess so. That's what we're doing. I'm going home.
Just send us home.
Yay! It's been a long day. So again, just to follow up on previous questions about the Rangers, and we have talked about increasing the number of Rangers. And in relation to Operation Lentus, and of course the restructuring of the Canadian Army, and having kind of a homeland force to deal with things like natural disasters. Should we be expanding the Rangers to include the southern regions of Canada so that they're to help with Operation Lentus, as well as we often talk about, the Rangers being our eyes and ears of the North? Well, we got a large border that we want to be increasing security on. Why not use the Rangers to be our eyes and ears of the 49th parallel, through the Great Lakes, and of course, let's not forget about the Maritimes that have no Ranger units at all. And we could utilize a lot of Indigenous people in those regions to provide that expertise.
Of course, Mr. Chair, I would not opine on the employment of the Rangers because that's squarely with General Boivin at CJOC to be mindful of.
I'm sure you guys
said,
talk.
that we do value contribution of the Rangers, so if they can so be employed, this is why we need more of them. There's no plan to limit their size or location. To the previous member's point that the junior rangers don't have the necessary infrastructure and therefore we lose them, I'm really hanging my hat on the fact that we're going to grow the North, we're going to own the North, we're going we're expanding, we're investing into the North. I'm hopeful that it's going to provide the necessary infrastructure, not necessarily CAF infrastructure. It could be dual use. It could be other departments. We're going to come up north as a whole of government, but that will provide opportunities for the junior rangers, for the rangers, and wherever they are then employed by CJOC.
Thank you. We talked about the percentage of Francophones that are GOFOs, general officers, flag officers. What's the percentage of Indigenous members in as GOFOs?
I don't have this current year's statistic. My understanding is that we had a single senior GOFO that was self-identifying, but again, self-identification is voluntary, so we're unable to confirm.
We talked about the Navy. We have the HMCS Ville de Quebec. It is a Francophone frigate. Do we have any other vessels that are operationally Francophone and or fully bilingual?
Mr. Chair, you mean for the Navy or writ large? Okay, for the Navy. I'm tracking the VDQ Ville de Quebec, which, by the way, I was on board of for a day sail 3 weeks ago in rough seas, and I could attest the fact that they do have Francophones on that ship. The HMCS Montreal as well typically has been more bilingual than the VDQ, but still with a good share of Francophone company on board that ship. But those are the two that I'm tracking, aside from the naval reserves, for example, in Quebec and Montreal at the HQ.
that Admiral Topshade has started through the Royal Canadian Navy is the Naval Experience Program, getting around basic training because, not everybody in the Navy needs to be, trained as an Army infantry officer and needs different skill sets. So are we seeing that Naval Experience Recruiting Program being used by the Naval Reserves in Quebec and Montreal?
I should stop playing with that button, Mr. Chair. So the answer is yes. The Naval Experiential Program is rending good dividends, lending good dividends. We're observing a good trend of transition between this program and going to the reg force, but as well remaining in the reserve force. I see this as very positive. We've been going at it, and by we I mean the Navy. It's really Angus Topshee that runs this. I'm not to the point that I'm going to share a portion of the strategic intake. I'm going to contract it out to the Navy. But whatever they're doing, the excellent work that they're doing this, allow us to close the gap towards the 71,500 faster. And at some point, we may need to just wrap our hands around this, and it's still a pilot program. But once we declare that it's permanent, I think that's going to lend great dividends for the Canadian Armed Forces.
Canadian Coast Guard is now part of national defense. Do we have the same type of criteria and targets for Francophone and Indigenous numbers within the Canadian Coast Guard?
Mr. Chair, I cannot actually talk about the Coast Guard because they don't, as you mentioned, they're under national defense. They're not under the CAF. So therefore, we're not doing their recruiting. They're doing their own recruiting. They have their own systems. But we are looking and seeking efficiencies and opportunities on both ends. They have academy, the Coast Guard Academy, that we're in conversation with our Canadian Defense Academy to see where we could partner up and generate synergies between the two organizations for sure.
Okay. Well,
okay, let me just one more.
One more. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, as we know that history and heritage play a big part of the pride and the morale within the Canadian Armed Forces, and we know that that represents every region of the country, especially when you look at our Army units, the different brigades that we have, the history they have, and you think about in Quebec we have the Bandous, we have a number of different regiments and armories across the country, or in Quebec, our Francophone units with strong identities like the Volontaires de Quebec. So how are we maintaining that history and preserving that from the standpoint of keeping it embedded within the Canadian Armed Forces and have that pride and improved morale? And how does the upcoming changes to the CAF dress manual potentially impact that, especially from an Army Reserve and basis from that historical standpoint? Is this reunification all over again? We witnessed back in the
So thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So the last question, I think it's no. We're not. It's not that. One thing I could say is from a reserve perspective, from a footprint perspective, from that perspective, it's really key that our reserve are strong and they're well supported throughout what they need, like from an infrastructure perspective, equipment perspective, and all that. And a lot of those reserves are under the Army and are part of the discussion from an Army modernization perspective. Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Chair, just to supplement what was just said, I think we value diversity. Therefore, we're not trying to go back to unification and we're really trying to allow the dress manual to be flexible enough to account for all those culture items that needs and the traditions of the reserve, but also to onboard new culture and Indigenous being front and center as well, in order for them to thrive within the Canadian Armed Forces. So the dress manual is meant to be flexible by more and more by nature.
Thank you to the witnesses, and appreciate your thorough discussions and responses, and recognizing also the increased desire by the public who are paying greater attention to the defense and to the attraction of becoming a member of the armed forces. So congratulations for all that you do. Thank you to our committee. Before I adjourn, a reminder that the deadline for recommendations for the critical mineral study is April 20th for your recommendations. So please make sure you have that on time. And now, given that time is up, I ask the committee for agreement to adjourn this meeting. Meeting adjourned. Yes, my pleasure.
It was never an issue.
It was never an issue.